Well, thanks everybody for being here. My name is Eddie Matthews. I'm the Regional Research Associate for the Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research. Here to talk about our most recent report, the equity gaps in priority jobs and programs, and I'll just dive right in. So the report is going to be, look intimidating at first because the PDF is 80 pages, but I just wanted to assure you there's 28 pages that are the body of the report. So that 28 pages is, where you're going to focus your attention. There's 50 pages of appendices with data tables if you wanted to do a deep dive into the data, and those are resources for you. And we consolidated that analysis into 2 recommendations at the end. And then we have our executive summary, kind of 1 pager at the beginning. So, the report seems big, but it is palatable once you get into it. So here's the research objectives for this report. We analyzed the labor market information of the demand and then looked at the post-secondary education data or the supply, the community college program data. And then once we analyzed these data, we identified priority jobs in high wage, high demand areas, and then established priority programs that lead to those jobs, that train for those priority jobs. And I'll go over the criteria for those in a minute. And then once we established those priority jobs and programs, we looked at the equity gaps based on age, gender, and race ethnicity. And we did this in collaboration with the San Diego Workforce Partnership. So some of the key definitions that I wanted to walk you through really quick are the priority jobs. So there's 4 criteria that each priority job in the report met. That first criteria requires at least a high school diploma, but less than a bachelor's degree, has 50 annual job openings or more in San Diego County. This is considered high demand in that case. Pays at or above the living wage of $18.43 per hour for a single adult. High wage, typically requires fewer than 5 years of work experience. So jobs designed to be kind of stepped into after a student completes their community college education. And then priority programs are community colleges that train for priority jobs. So those programs that lead to these priority jobs ideally. So each job and program has a code or identifier. I'm sure this is not new information to anybody on this call, but just in case you needed a refresher. So for the priority jobs, we have the SOC codes, the standard occupation classification codes. And for our priority programs, we have our taxonomy of program codes, our top codes. So we found 91 priority jobs or SOC codes that we identified in the report and 98 priority programs. So it's nice, there's kind of about a 1-to-1 relationship there between the priority jobs and programs we identified. Just to give you a landscape of how this looks in terms of the total SOC occupations. So there's 867 total SOC occupations in the system, and we're only looking at 91 of those priority jobs that met those 4 criteria. So this is only 10% of everything that's out there. So this is a very kind of select few. Priority jobs are about 13% of the annual job openings in San Diego County. So around 21,000 of the annual jobs are for these 91 priority jobs versus the 160 plus thousand annual job openings for all SOC occupations. There are 98 top codes that have 236 programs in San Diego County. So you can see for the 9 colleges in San Diego County how this distributes through those 9 colleges on this map here. 236 active programs as of fall 2021. Here's an example of how that can look. So 1 top code, fire technology 2133. There's 3 distinct programs that can map onto that top code or claim that top code. So Fire and Sense Technology and Associates, Company Office Certification Certificate, and Fire Sense Technology as a certificate. So these are 3 distinct programs that all have that top code 2133. So that's how we get a much bigger figure for the active programs than we get for the top codes. Let's give an example of how that looks. Yeah, so as far as identifying the equity gaps in the priority jobs, the first part of the presentation, I'll go over the priority jobs, second part, priority programs. For the priority jobs, we looked at the demographic composition of the labor force, as a whole in San Diego County in terms of gender, age, and race ethnicity, and then compared the demographic compositions of these priority jobs, and then looked at the equity gaps and the disparities we found there, and saw is there an underrepresentation in a specific group, is there an overrepresentation? And then just to give you one example of how that looks. So females in carpentry, 45% of the labor force in San Diego County is female, but only 3% of carpenters are female for the SOC code that we see here. So these are the kinds of disparities we want to highlight in the report. And again, we mirrored this on the priority program side. So what's the demographic composition of the community college student population as a whole in terms of gender, age, and race ethnicity for San Diego County? And then that's our benchmark that we then compare the demographic composition of these program enrollments. Establish, is there an underrepresentation or an overrepresentation? And then similarly, see where these disparities are. So example, to return to carpentry as an example, as a top code this time for a priority program. So 54% of our community college population is female, but only 2% are enrolled in the carpentry priority program. So again, trying to look at these disparities and then ask questions about why these might be here. So I wanted everyone to get their hard hats on because you're about to experience a data dump. So please be forewarned, we're about to jump in. Alex Berry, I don't think he can make it on the call today, but he's always ready for a good data dump. So getting into the data, we established the benchmark here. Here we have gender and age. I mentioned labor force as a whole versus community college population as a whole. So we'll start with gender here on the left. 45% of the labor force is female, 55% male. And then this ratio is inverted for the community college population. So 54% of community college students are female, 46% are male. Age, we have kind of opposite trends here. The younger the age range, the more enrolled in community college, whereas this is the opposite trend for the labor workforce. The older that we get in the labor workforce, the more representation there is. So, unsurprisingly, 50% of our community college population is in that 16 to 24 age bracket, whereas only 16% of that age participates in the labor force. And then, the community college demographic decreases as we get older, and the labor force increases as we get older, which you can see here. Here's how this looks for race ethnicity. The labor force is in blue, enrolled in community college is in gray. So each of the race ethnicity, each is about commensurate between the labor force and those enrolled in community college, except for whites and Latinos. So for whites, 48% of the labor force is white versus only 33% of our enrolled community college students are white. And then this ratio is flipped for Latinos, so 30% of which are participating in the labor force, 41% those enrolled in community college. So getting into these equity gaps, so we looked at the priority jobs or the SOC codes with significant under or overrepresentation by these demographic groups, and I'll kind of itemize this in a bit here. So we can see, the number of jobs with underrepresentation for females was 56, for males 33. Those ages 55 and older, we established what the overrepresentation is, so that signifies a retiring workforce. So those are SOC codes we'll want to keep an eye on because they might experience a retirement cliff very soon. Black, Indigenous, persons of color, 72 underrepresented in these priority jobs. BIPOC women, 19, BIPOC men, 14. And then just a reminder of the 4 criteria that signify a priority job. So again, requires at least high school diploma, but less than a bachelor's degree, has 50 annual job openings or more in San Diego County, pays at or above the living wage of $18.43 per hour for a single adult, and typically requires fewer than 5 years of work experience. So we'll want to keep those criteria in mind as we get into these priority jobs. So yeah, looking at how this looks for rates of underrepresentation for females, they're underrepresented in 56 priority jobs, 56 of the 91. So table 4 has all 56 priority jobs and SOC codes. I included just an excerpt here of the 15 occupations with the lowest representation. So here we have bus and truck mechanics, cement masons and concrete finishers, electrical installers, mobile heavy equipment operators, plumbers, carpenters, all with 3% or less female representation. Males were underrepresented in 33 priority jobs. So again, table 5 has all 33 jobs, but here I just included the 15 occupations with the lowest representation among males. So we have executive secretaries, legal secretaries, dental hygienists, payroll clerks, on down, 11% and less representation for those top 3. 47 priority jobs were overrepresented by ages 55 and plus. So this is that retiring workforce that I referred to earlier. So here, table 6 has all 47 jobs. Here I just included the top 15 with the highest percentage of 55 plus. So we have postal service mail carriers, court municipal clerks, water and wastewater treatment plant system operators. I wanted to cue in on this one in particular for a moment, just because our Center of Excellence and John Edwards in particular, who's on this call, did a lot of work for a water and wastewater, statewide analysis of this sector. So be on the lookout for that statewide Center of Excellence report coming out soon, because that does a deep dive into the water wastewater industry and how this retiring workforce is going to impact it. So here we have charts, about 9 pages of charts for each race ethnicity for all of the priority jobs, and it shows rates of underrepresentation. I included about a dozen here as an excerpt. So here on the left, we have African Americans and the rates of underrepresentation. So carpenters, dental hygienists, drywall and tile installers, floor layers, all 2% or less representation among African Americans. On the right here, we have the occupational titles in the race among Hispanic and Latinos. So web developers and digital interface designers, computer user support specialists, computer network support specialists, all have low representation indicated by that orange color. I'll return to this example here at the end of the presentation, just to give you a sense of how you can really use this data to make some action. And the report has a summary of all of the demographic groups that we looked at and then puts them into one chart and summarizes kind of under overrepresentation in all the priority jobs. So you can see this in table 13, pages 29 through 31 of the report. So you can see, a dot indicates that group in particular is underrepresented. And then on the far right here, you'll see the ages 55 plus overrepresented, a dot there being indicating that this is a retiring workforce priority job. So you might be wondering, does the report include wage data for the SOC codes? And I'm happy to say, yes, it does. Here's how that looks. It's Appendix A. So, if you see a particular disparity, or a particular underrepresentation for a specific group, and you want to look more into the data of what that SOC code offers, you can look in Appendix A, and it has all, 91 priority jobs and occupational titles, SOC codes, as well as the annual job openings, entry-level wages, and typical entry-level education. So you can see for each of these jobs, you'll notice these from the chart with the low representation among African Americans, and then you can see this occupational chart later if you want to look at that data and see, okay, dental hygienist, plenty of job openings, really high starting salary, just need an associate degree. Maybe we should focus in on this priority program to increase enrollment, say. And you can see how each of these met the criteria. So now that we've talked about the demand, we're going to talk about the supply, and who better to usher in this conversation than father of supply and demand economics, Adam Smith. Always ready for a good data dump, this guy. Okay, so looking at the priority programs, now that we're talking about the supply coming from the community colleges, similarly, we saw the chart on the priority jobs. Here's the chart for those rates of underrepresentation among females, males, ages 19 and younger, BIPOC, women and men. So let's get into the data as far as how the supply looks. So females were underrepresented in 40 priority programs. Again, table 9 has all 40. I just wanted to include, a dozen so to give you a sense of what the most underrepresented programs were. So here we have the top code from the community college program, the name, and the rate of representation. So construction, crafts, technology, carpentry, electrical, all 3% or fewer representation among females in the community college system. Males were underrepresented in 18 priority programs. So table 10 shows all 18. Here we have medical office technology, health information technology, and fashion merchandising all show 18% or fewer representation among male, which is significantly less than the 46% male representation among the community college population. So youth were underrepresented in 32 priority programs. Youth defined here as 19 and younger. So again, table 11 shows all 32. Here we have construction, crafts, technology, horticulture, tax studies, carpentry, electrical, all with 3% or less representation among 19 and younger, our youngest demographic. So some of the trades are very underrepresented with this group. Yeah, and then mirroring on the priority program side, like we did for the priority jobs, we have charts for all of the priority programs broken down by race, ethnicity, and the rates of representation here. So on the left, we'll see for African Americans, the program name and the rate of representation in that priority program. Again, orange signifies, significant underrepresentation. So we can see, a dozen examples here on the left. For Latinos here on the right, health occupations, general law, low rates of recommendation. And then we can see computer support, development, computer support as a whole for priority programs. Again, those information and communications technology field tend to have low representation for Latinos in the workforce and in the community college system. So that's something that we wanted to highlight in this report. And again, like you saw with the jobs, we have this summary of underrepresentation in priority programs. So for all the demographic categories we looked at, broken down by priority program. About 68% of all the priority programs had underrepresentation for at least one of these demographics. So you can see how that looks, a dot indicating that there is significant underrepresentation for that group. And here's a summary of all the colleges with priority programs with top codes included. So you can see all 9 colleges in San Diego County and which priority programs they offer by top code. Table 15 of the report. Yeah, so now that we've identified the equity gaps in priority jobs and programs and really looked at this data, what do we actually do with it? So we have 2 recommendations in the report. Recommendation number 1 is that community colleges should work with employers to diversify employment in priority jobs and increase underrepresented groups' interest in these positions. So as you're talking and collaborating with employers, how can we develop and diversify their talent pipeline, particularly in priority jobs with underrepresented groups? So just making them aware of these data and then showing them, how we could use these data to inform how they recruit and retain their staff. So one practical example here is that we see, the priority job of aircraft mechanics and service technicians is significantly underrepresented among females, but it's overrepresented among ages 55 plus. So we have a retiring workforce for aircraft mechanics, and what better way to replenish that talent pipeline than to diversify it with more female workers in this field. So how would this collaboration look in the conversations you're having with employers, making them aware of this gender disparity and also making them aware of this retiring workforce. So that's recommendation number 1. Recommendation number 2, our last recommendation, is community colleges should develop targeted recruitment and retention strategies for priority programs with significantly underrepresented groups. So again, using the data that we see here, so maybe we identify a priority program like website design and development, and we see that, there's several groups that's underrepresented in, but one group in particular that we saw that was also mirrored in the priority job side is underrepresented among Latinos for web development and digital interface designers. So once we know this, how could we, put together a marketing strategy that uses the labor market information that we see in the report, Appendix A showing the annual job openings, entry-level hourly wage, entry-level education, demonstrating that this is a really viable field, but it's underrepresented among Latinos. So how can we put together kind of a marketing strategy to target recruitment for a priority program of web development aimed at Latinos? It's one example of how you could use these data. So yeah, and then just finally to wrap us up here, we have 3 questions. We have reflection questions in all of our reports from the Center of Excellence. These are just 3 from this particular report. Has your college worked with industry and local employers to promote hiring of underrepresented groups? What successes has your college experienced with targeted marketing campaigns for specific groups? How can you apply those strategies to promote priority programs to underrepresented groups? So for like all of our reports, we hope that these instigate some meaningful conversations, and we include some questions there to kind of guide some of those meaningful conversations and the use of the data. So here's a QR code to access that report. And I know we're running short on time in this meeting today, so I'll put my email address in the chat. I'm always happy to, come to your campus and present these data and kind of run a workshop, or, we can always have a meeting one-on-one to go through it. I'm happy to walk you through the data in whatever way is most meaningful for you. Thanks for having me today.